Hello and welcome to today's The After Chapter, where I will be speaking with Susan Abul Hawa. She is a wonderful author who writes a lot about Palestinian stories, and she has kindly agreed to speak with me today to answer my questions and any questions that you might have. There is a small box here at the bottom where you have a question mark, so feel free to send any questions you have for Susan. I will just invite Susan to join us now. So that we can start asking questions. Some of them I have received already from followers of mine and Susan's. So just have to wait a second or two to see if Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Sorry, I gotta go, Chris. Sorry. I'm in the middle of moving and knee deep in boxes and contractors, and I look a mess, so my apologies.
No, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me despite everything that's happening in your life.
It's my pleasure. So
thank you so
I'm
much.
sitting here and you see all these boxes.
Yeah, I can see the boxes. Very glamorous.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I would like to dedicate our conversation today to everything you do through your writing and your charity work. So I want to thank you for joining us. I have also given a link here at the bottom. I think you can all see it, to try and raise some funds for Playgrounds for Palestine, which is
how lovely.
Yes, that is Susan's charity. We will also speak about that today. But first, I would like to speak with you a little bit about your book, Mornings in Jenin. Can you hear me? Okay. All right, I think Susan is having some technical difficulties. We'll just give her a moment to try to hop back on. Thanks to everyone who has already joined. Okay, so I'll add Susan again, and hopefully we'll be more successful this time around.
Hi, am I back?
Hi.
Sorry.
That's okay, not a problem. It happens all the time. This is the beauty of going live. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to ask you, the family in Mornings in Jenin has a very similar surname to yours. And even the story itself, I know you've spoken about this before, is quite connected to your own history. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know that you were born to refugees in Kuwait, and then you moved quite a lot.
Yeah. So Abul Hija, so it sounds similar to my name only in English, but in Arabic it's not. It's just Abul Hawa and Abul Hija are actually quite far apart in the Arabic language. But Abul Hija is an actual family that was originally from Ain Hod, and so it's one of the biggest families from that village who were expelled. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people try and sort of make those parallels that it's autobiographical. It's mostly fictional. There are some autobiographical aspects. The orphanage chapter is entirely autobiographical. However, I'm not Amal. Amal is not me. The characters are, as a matter of fact, Amal kind of annoyed me.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
She can be hard to love all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that you also then lived in USA, and then you returned to Kuwait. You lived in Palestine. You also returned to USA, and then in the end studied neuroscience. What led you to choose that profession?
Um, Arab families are they like to Arab families. There's like only like three professions in the world that matter. Either you're a doctor or an engineer or something. So I always had like something to prove, and as a woman, somebody who was, uh, like as you said, I mean, I had to move around a lot. I was between families and between homes a lot, and I kind of always wanted to prove that I was smart or whatever. So I was going to go to medical school. But when I got to medical school, I realized I couldn't bear the feeling of cutting into skin. On our first sort of gross anatomy classes, even on cadavers, I couldn't bear it. And so I switched to a PhD program and in neuroscience. And so that's kind of how I fell into that. And I worked for many years as a researcher for drug companies in the U.S., which is kind of in a way does parallel Amal's life when she comes to the U.S. And when I decided to leave
Yeah.
the lab, and when I wrote my novel, and I didn't earn very much, and so I switched to medical writing. So that's where I did put Amal in that part of my life, but yeah, that was the progression of my career.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was it that first moved you when you came to Palestine? You came to Palestine at a very crucial time then when you returned. It was a very poignant moment where you decided to fund this charity, and from there, I believe, is where your writing career actually emerged.
So yeah, I it was in
Oh, I can't hear you. Ah, okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry.
Yes, now I can
Um,
hear you. Yeah.
and it was in the year 2000. My daughter was 3 years old at the time, and playgrounds were like a huge part of our life here. And we went to the playground every day, and it was just a joy for my daughter. And when I went back to Palestine, I had been gone for like 18 years, and so the absence of playgrounds was really evident to me. And I just saw everywhere I looked, where I saw an empty space, I imagined a playground there. And when I came back, I thought maybe it was doable to build playgrounds. And I didn't know how crazy the idea was. And only in retrospect, a lot of people in the community told me that they thought I was kind of nuts in wanting to do that. But I did it, and it was hard, and I didn't know what I was doing. But that's kind of in general my MO in my life. I just kind of plunge into something and say a Hail Mary and hope it works out. And usually it's disasters, but in the case of the playground project, and also deciding to just leave science and just write and mortgage my house and everything just to do that. I mean, all of those were just kind of decisions that I made kind of without a whole lot of thought, to be honest. I mean, it does sound crazy, I think, but that's what happened. And the playground, because of the playground project, I was going to Palestine every year. When the Jenin massacre was taking place, I was still working at a drug company, and but I took my 2 weeks vacation and decided to just go there and kind of just be there. It's hard to be in the United States when your people are getting slaughtered. And I was a lot more mobile and at that time, and I just went. And it turned out that I was one of the very few and first eyewitnesses to the immediate aftermath of what had happened. And I didn't realize how little international presence there actually was on the ground. There wasn't really very few, despite, you know, it was in the news, there were very few reporters actually there. The Red Cross was only coming through with delegations. They weren't actually working to recover bodies or anything like that. It was all Red Crescent volunteers and camp volunteers who were doing the work. But anyway, so you know, that experience was life changing and transformative in a lot of ways. It was just you know, sort of being that close to death. I mean, not my own, but just sort of smelling death and being so close to such extraordinary carnage and cruelty just kind of reoriented my life in a lot of ways. And I when I came back, I just started writing. I didn't really know what else to do. I didn't know what I was writing. Shortly thereafter, I was fired from my job. You know, I was writing a lot of political commentary that, you know, was displeasing to my bosses, and it cost me my job. This was, you know, post 9/11. A lot of things were permitted at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just kept writing. I didn't know what else to do. I was broke. I had no money. I had no income. I had no savings. I have no family in this country. So I mortgaged my house, and I just borrowed a lot of money, and I went into massive debt. And I just kept writing, and Mornings in Jenin was the was the result.
The result of that, yeah. What you mentioned is very interesting to me as well. I have a friend who lives in Lebanon, and we've been friends for 20 plus years. So I've heard a lot about this situation that has been going on there for years, and I've heard very different stories from her than the ones that I would read, you know, in the media. So what you also mentioned, you know, that you lost your job because you were vocal about what you thought was wrong. Did you find that you had any difficulties finding a publisher for your book?
Oh gosh, yeah. Matter of fact, I couldn't find a publisher in the United States until finally there's a very small publishing house took it on. At the time, it was called The Scar of David. It wasn't Mornings in Jenin yet. And this was in 2006. And unbeknownst to me, they were actually going out of business. And they, you know, by the time it was ready for publication, I mean, just a very small quantity were printed, and then it was just kind of dead on arrival. Nothing happened with it. But in the meantime, there a French editor at Boucher Chastel and an Italian editor at it wasn't Feltrinelli, sorry, it was another, I can't remember now. They had read it and they liked it and they wanted to publish it. And so it was translated into French and Italian, and it was doing well in both of those places. So and it was through my French publisher, Marc Parent, that I was able to get an agent in Barcelona who then sold my book to Bloomsbury in the UK. So, and it was through Bloomsbury UK that it actually came to the United States. So I never did really find a publisher in the United States. It was, you know, it was just, I had to go through Europe to get to the United States. And even, interestingly, even after like the huge success of Mornings in Jenin, like my latest novel, I switched agents for my latest novel, and she kind of thought it would be a really easy sell given the success of Mornings in Jenin, my platform and readership. She was a little bit shocked by how hard it was to find a home for my new novel. And but you know, it all worked out for the best because I have a wonderful publisher at Atria. They've been just amazing. But no, it wasn't easy, and it's still not easy. And I think Palestinian writers, I shouldn't say Palestinian writers. I think this writing
Topic?
about Palestine. It's not just the topic, but writing about it in a certain way, in a way that does not cater to what Westerners want to hear, but rather it's just an account, a truthful account, or even if it's fictional um, of Palestinian life. I think that's hard to get published in this country, and even when it is published, it's hard to get uh, recognition in literary circles, because there are still in this industry a lot of gatekeepers who really don't want literature like mine.
Like that, yeah, to come out. We have a question from Maya. Okay, Maya says, "Hi, Susan. Can I please ask you to explain the conflict between Israel and Palestine for dummies? I always end up telling my friends the most complicated version and they don't understand."
I mean, look, I think it's a little bit annoying that people sort of ask Palestinians to constantly kind of explain things. First of all, it's not a conflict. I mean, people should really make an effort to read and try and understand.
Inform themselves.
It's not the job. I mean, I've written multiple books. I mean, I would tell people to read my books. I mean, this is you want the sort of the cliff notes is just.
Yeah.
I think people should really understand what they're asking Palestinians to do. A lot of times when questions like that are asked, this is a settler colonial enterprise, pure and simple. Foreigners from Europe came to Palestine, under the auspices of God, presumably, and took over something. It's really simple. It's not complicated. It's like every other settler colonial project, but in general, don't ask Palestinians to explain themselves. Don't ask us to explain our humanity. We all write, we all create, we all explain. It's all available for people to put in a little effort.
Sometimes it still surprises me, for example, especially now in this day and age, because we have so much information at our disposal, just a few clicks away, if nothing else, that people are really so largely poorly informed, if nothing else, So I wanted you to share the symbolism of watermelon for Palestine, because I got some questions about it and I decided I would ask you to explain it because I like the story behind it.
Well, this seems to be getting a lot of play recently for some reason. First of all, watermelon is like a huge part of our at least summer diet.
Absolutely,
I mean, it was always, it's
joyful fruit.
It really is. But so in Palestine, it was prior to the Oslo Accords, flying the Palestinian flag was illegal, and you could be imprisoned for it. So people took to posting photos of watermelon because it's the same colors.
The same colors.
And I mean, there were stories of people getting getting arrested for displaying open watermelons or or photos of watermelons and whatnot. And Palestinian artists began painting watermelons, and and there are poems about watermelons. So yeah, and it's there's in the United States, there's a lot of tropes about watermelon and African Americans, and I kind of love it because it's like one more thing that Palestinians have with Black America. We love watermelon, and it's part of our it's any kind of outdoor experience. We'll have watermelon, and it was just always the thing we had after food in the summertime.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a very it's always a happy memory. I think whenever I see a watermelon, I'm always like it brings a smile on my face anyway because it makes me think of summer, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah.
I have it. I plant watermelon. I have it growing in my garden.
Oh, excellent. So that's also a little bit rebellious from you. Um, Let me ask you, where is home for you today?
That's a good question. Um, I mean, I live in Pennsylvania. I'm actually in the middle of moving right now from my house where I've been for 20 some years. Um, but home is I have this conversation with friends and other Palestinians a lot here. I mean, I've been in the United States since 1983, and I've never really felt at home. I've never felt like I belong here. Um,
That is
I
hard.
I am, I like to be close to my daughter, and she is, she's at home in this place. So, I'm content, and that's where I want to be, is wherever she is. I used to feel that Jerusalem was home, but it has
Mhm.
become so foreign and alien to me because it doesn't look like the Jerusalem I lived in my youth. Um, but it also, it is the place where I began, and it's the place where all my grandparents and ancestors are buried. It's where my parents were born. It's where I lived. Um, so the most formidable years of my youth were in Jerusalem. Um, I mean, formative.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I don't know. I really don't know where home is. I'm not sure that anybody who is exiled can, um, answer that
Simply answer
fully.
that
And
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a simple answer.
Absolutely. Um, the stories in Mornings in Janine, for example, they were hard, they were very raw, and yet I sort of always felt a little bit of hope underneath it all. Do you believe that hope is what floats and what remains, or rather what happens when there is no more hope?
So I think all revolution, all struggle is predicated on hope, right? Like, why would we even be here? Why would we even be doing this if there was no hope? Why would I write? Why would, of course, there's always hope. Um, why have children if there's no hope? We're a very hopeful people. I think humans in general, that's our sustenance. You know, that's why we get up every day. And uh, so, um, I I am hopeful. I am hopeful that justice will prevail in Palestine. And not just hopeful, I believe it will happen. Um, because history, uh, history has a lot of lessons and a lot of examples, um, that show that justice ultimately prevails. Um, it's kind of like Dr. King says, um, what is it? Oh my God. The arc bends toward justice. The moral arc of the
Yeah.
universe bends toward justice. And I believe that. It's a long arc, but it bends toward justice.
Yeah. I once read somewhere someone said that when there's no hope left, that's when a person's inner life is gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Can I ask you a little bit about your writing routine? How do you approach a story? Do you usually first see characters in your mind, or is it a story that sparks for you?
Um, Usually I start with like a seed of something, an idea, a sentence, an event, something. Um, and then I just start writing. And then the characters emerge, everything emerges as I'm writing. I really don't know much about a story except for a few seeds. With Mornings in Janine, the seed wasn't even an original idea. It was it was based on a story by Ghassan Kanafani called Return to Haifa, in which
Mm-hmm.
A Palestinian boy grows up as an Israeli. Excuse me. I never actually read that novella. It's the only work by Ghassan Kanafani that I didn't read, and I didn't read it intentionally. But I grew up thinking actually that was a real story. I'd heard it, when I was a child, and I was fascinated by it, and I always thought it was something that really happened, until, much later I realized it was a novella. And when I decided to write Mornings in Janine, I, intentionally didn't want to read it. So that was one of the seeds. I also, I knew that I wanted it to because of what I experienced when I went to Janine in 2002. So, but the story and the characters emerge from the writing process. And I will say this: my early drafts are really usually crap, like really bad. Like the characters are stick figures. They are, they don't have a lot of depth. But it's really with the rewriting that the story emerges and the characters develop, and at some point in the writing process, I feel like the characters tell their own story, and and I start to have feelings toward them, like whether whether I love them, I can't stand them, whatever it is. Like I will have real feelings, like they're real people to me, and when I get to that point, that's kind of how I know that okay, it's getting ready. So.
How important was it for you to write about Palestinian women? You dedicated your entire novel to them.
Yeah, actually, all of my novels.
Yeah.
Well,
Center on.
I mean, I'm a woman. It's like, if I had written about men, I wonder if I would be asked, why did you write about men?
No, because you also all of your characters that were male were just as delicate. Just no, not supporting cast, but I meant that sometimes they expect authors to be much better at describing their own gender or feeling what they feel. But I didn't feel this disconnect between the characters that were male or female.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I appreciate knowing that. Well, I mean, I'm glad. I feel like, but I feel like I understand, well, not that I understand women better. I think I find I'm more interested in the lives of women.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm interested in the lives of people who are marginalized in general, even within our own society. Like my new book is about, a sex worker, Palestinian sex worker who is, somebody who would be outcast in a society that's already put to the margins of humanity. And women in general in every society are thwarted and often oppressed. So I am more interested in their lives. I also come from a family of women. I was raised by women, by really strong women. My grandmother, my aunts. I was, when I lived in the orphanage in Jerusalem, Sittend al-Husseini was, hugely important in my life. So yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to have many mothers actually in my life.
That's wonderful. I think the more maternal figures that we have in our lives, the better, actually.
Yeah.
So tell me, you mentioned your upcoming work. Can I ask you, do you have like a goal that you set for yourself? How you write? Do you have a routine that you follow? Especially now that you're moving, that must be very interesting to work in.
So my new novel isn't upcoming. It's already published. It was published in August of last year.
Okay.
So it hasn't been out for a whole year yet. I haven't really been writing much lately because I just can't. I need to be settled. So you're right in perceiving that it's hard to write when you're moving. I actually I can't. Um, but my routine is this. I'm a really early riser in general. So I will get up pretty early, either 5 o'clock or even before. I'll have some coffee. I'll walk my dogs or run or do whatever I'm doing at the time, depending on the weather. And then I just sit down at my computer for hours on end. And I usually will stop around noon, have my first meal or something. And after that, I don't do well sitting at my computer to write after like maybe 1 o'clock, just because my brain doesn't really work well in the afternoon.
So you're more a morning person then?
Oh, for sure. I love the early morning. I love when everybody else is asleep, but there's a little bit of light. The sun is just kind of opening its eyes too. And
The promise of a new day.
yeah, yeah. But that said, I mean, even when I'm not sitting at my computer, I'm still writing. I'm writing in my head, I'm writing in the shower, I'm writing when I drive. You think about it. I really love the process. It's nerve-wracking, it's scary. It's really kind of a vulnerable experience in a lot of ways, and it's replete with self-doubt, and because especially when the early drafts suck and I know they're terrible, I have to always remind myself that, okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. But, when you're in the thick of it, it's like, oh my God, what am I thinking? Am I really a writer? This sucks. How did it?
Just the usual. Okay, well, Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. We have also managed to raise some money for Playgrounds for Palestine.
Wonderful.
It shows to me 135 euros, so I think that's a little more in American dollars. So thank you so much for everyone who donated. Thank you so much from me and Susan. Thank you for listening and watching, and please stay informed, read, watch, be open. Thank you, Susan. Have a wonderful move. I know what that's like. So I wish you a lot of luck with all of the boxes and looking for everything that you might not find in the boxes when you're unpacking.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody
Thank you.
for watching.
Bye.